Hi there. It is November already, and I have another tarot reading for us and for our world. So, a couple things to note in this month's tarot that I did a little differently than I usually do. It was with the animal medicine deck and the Herbal Astrology Oracle deck. Usually, I just ask for general advice, but this month I had so many specific issues in mind. I decided to ask one of those questions of the animal medicine deck or the animal kingdom, and then I had another issue that I thought, well, I'll ask the plant kingdom what they would say, and wow, I got very surprising answers and some insights. Before I started this month's reading, actually, I was thinking about last month's questions regarding how best to survive and thrive, as well as the future of the US government. And for survival, we got, I think, the magician. The magician encouraged us to use our magic. And the judgment card indicated that as far as the government, the future of government is concerned, it is decision time. So I think we're at a critical point here. And so the questions this month continue to focus on government. I wanted more insight and more specific stuff. And so the cards drawn offered some really interesting perspectives. There's so much happening on the world stage. So let's begin. And the questions asked were, number one, what is the impact of the US government shutdown 6 months from now? And when I drew a card and I saw that card, I said, oh, what about 1 year from now? And when I saw that card, I said, oh, why? What has changed? And I drew a third card. So there's actually 3 cards for that first question. My second question was, what will happen to the financial system and the economy as a result of the shutdown? The third question was, what advice does the animal kingdom have for us in handling the politicians that were trapped and caught up in unsavory relationships with children or treasonous behavior? And question number 4 was, what advice does the plant kingdom have for us regarding the appearance of 3-eye Atlas? So the cards drawn for that first question, the first card drawn was the 3 of Cups. And I thought, oh, wow. So then when I saw, I said, well, that's 6 months from now. What about a year from now? I got the 5 of Cups. And then that's a whole different atmosphere. So I said, why? What changed? And I drew the 8 of Cups. So, yeah, so this very interesting little bunch of draws here. The second card regarding the economy and the financial system and the shutdown, I got the Justice card. It's pretty powerful. I have a lot to say about that. And then for question number 3, card number 3, I got the Wild Boar. Wow. So, and then question number 4, from the plant kingdom, I got a plant called mugwort. Mugwort, very interesting. So let's look at these. Question number 1 was, what is the impact of the US government shutdown 6 months from now? And of course, when I asked this question, I originally asked just for insight into the impact 6 months from now. And when I saw the 3 of Cups card, I thought, oh, wonderful. Does that continue into a year from now? So I drew a second card and I got the 5 of Cups. That was something of a disappointment. And so I asked the third question, why? What's happening in the government that we go from celebration to grieving? And I got the 8 of Cups. And this was somewhat unsettling. So let me say something briefly about each of these cards. And then what do you see when you put all 3 together? So the 3 of Cups is a card of celebration that involves a deep exchange of ideas, of feeling together and having accomplished something that opens horizons and brings a sense of finally moving in a direction that has long been sought. This is a card of the group experience, of having come together in ways that bring free and open speech in which people communicate. They talk about their likes and their dislikes, their boundaries and their goals. And the 3 of Cups represents a moment in time when there's great opportunity coupled with great danger. The danger here is one of confusion and loss of boundaries, of being unable to recognize who's a friend and who is foe. And it's also a card of descent into negativity, anxiety, and fear. So this card calls on women to bring forward their motherly attributes to balance the masculinity of the number 3 itself. So this card calls on everyone, both men and women, to step into emotional intelligence and handle a delicately balanced situation that promises a rich harvest if we can maintain awareness of how everyone is feeling, what is needed, and if we work from the heart. So I was really quite relieved to see the 3 of Cups. And since I had asked about only 6 months from now, I wanted to see if this would hold. So I said, well, what about 1 year from now? And I drew another card. And that brought the 5 of Cups, not a happy card. The 5 of Cups is one of those cards of sadness, regret, mourning, and grieving over what has been lost. This card represents dealing with the shadow side of life, which is the side of life we did not choose to allow. That's the shadow, the true shadow side. It's all that stuff that you looked at and ignored, or refused to go along with, or squelched in some way. So this card is about being aware of the hopes, the dreams, and the choices you did not make for reasons that usually have to do with trying to be normal, fear of what others would think, and feeling caught by promises you made that compromise your freedom in the future, in the same way that living on credit cards compromises your financial freedom in the future. So this is a card of borrowing from the future. However, the message that comes along with the intense feelings of this card is a message that goes something like this. You are at the beginning of something new, something you have only had vague ideas about. So they're ideas that haven't been well developed. So this card urges us to stop looking at the past and start looking at the future. It tells us, sit down together and sort out the problems and disputes we have avoided dealing with. It also tells us that time changes everything, and we must adjust. The number 5, this is a 5, represents a turning point. 5s are turning points, a transition. And that's something that comes up again and again in all these cards, transition, and indicates being in a narrow tunnel, a passageway, a place where there's no going back. And making a detour and going in another direction is out of the question. So this tells us we simply must move forward and look for the bridges to something new, because new possibilities and experiences are waiting for us. These two cards, the Three of Cups and the Five of Cups, suggest that something that started out as a celebration became something that brought grief and sadness. So this immediately brought the question, why? What is happening in government? Why are people grieving? And I drew another card hoping for something good, but I got the Eight of Cups. This is another card of intense emotion and disappointment or disillusionment of having our cups not being filled. So the Eight of Cups is a card of abandoning something. Our question is about our government and the impact of the shutdown. Are we feeling abandoned, or are we abandoning government, or what? So this is a card of abandoning something and of walking away in order to search for something else. It's a card of questioning everyone and everything, hoping to find a satisfactory answer. But the only real answer is to master the power of will and the heart, and then use this power to exercise your influence and create consciously. It also represents the need to rely on yourself. Where have we heard that before? It tells us we must trust our own strength, and we have to be confident in what we do know, while at the same time be humble enough to admit what we don't know. In considering all three cards and summing up the messages, they appear to be telling us that the impact of the shutdown results in a feeling of woo celebration at first, possibly because we have come together in some way to make something happen that needed to happen. If we look at the divide in America between people on the left and those on the right, maybe we managed to bridge the gap and get things moving again. But the feeling of celebration does not hold, and within a year, there's grief and sadness. And this might be because we have not been able to recover as well or as quickly as we thought. You know, we're just not recovering as quickly as we imagined that we would, or even that we are seeing that we might not recover. Or that certain aspects and institutions of government may not be reinstated. So let's hope that the military has recovered, because without a good, stable military, we will be very vulnerable, especially with so many military-aged men in our country that are not citizens. So on the positive side of these cards, we have the very blunt and potent message that regardless of what the shutdown brings, we are facing something new, or we are searching for something new. It could be a renewed awareness of our love of our land, maybe of a love of our freedom, or an appreciation for that freedom. Our role in the world, we do have a role as people leading the way toward more evolved systems of self-governance. And self-governance, let me just add, is a highly evolved concept requiring each of us to be personally and deliberately aware of what we think, say, and do in the world. It's not a form of governance that one reaches in one step either, or without consciously choosing it. You don't just sort of end up there. You have to choose it. So it requires some chaos to wake people up, and I think we're having that now. And then a period of fierce questioning and self-examination. And that's what this is. And the willingness to try something new and then refine and correct as we go. So key words for these three cards are gaiety, group effort, empathy, joining together, fluid, adventure, disruption, crisis, instability, intensity, radical change, disappointment, taking action, inner directed, letting go, managing, worldly involvement, transition, limits, delay, obstacles, and abandonment of former success. Wow. Question number 2. What will happen to the financial system and the economy as a result of the shutdown? And the card drawn here was the very interesting and powerful Justice card. Number 11 in the major arcana, an indicator that the shutdown will have a major impact on our money system, not just our government, on our money. In fact, it hints that the shutdown is possibly a necessary prelude to a major change in our financial system. So maybe someone is using the shutdown as a setup for changing the financial system. So the Justice card shows a figure sitting on a throne between two pillars. The throne symbolizes responsibility for making wise decisions. And the two pillars represent the fact that upholding justice is what holds a group together. The figure holds a sword in one hand, symbolizing a need for intelligent approach, a very intelligent approach to handling the financial system and the issue of money. And then in the other hand, there's a pair of scales, and that represents fairness, honesty, balance, and solutions that work for all without leaving out those groups who disagree or who are considered not important. The figure on the throne wears the red robe of passion, indicating that human passions are often the thing that must be managed by justice. Sometimes we get carried away. And this is accomplished by tempering decisions with an understanding of the natural human, whether he's fully mature or not. And that is symbolized by that green mantle around his shoulders. The figure also wears a crown designed with 3 battlements on it. And that symbolizes a willingness to go to battle for something of value to humanity. I think that's, our financial system. It's kind of like a lifeline for a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people would be willing to go to fight for that, go to battle for that. The jewel on the crown represents the third eye and the need for true justice, to consider what cannot be seen physically, which introduces the challenge of taking human development, past lives, early life experiences, clairvoyance, and intuition into account when making decisions that are fair and just. The Justice card, and this is something that not a lot of people talk about, this is known as a borderline card. A borderline card. This means it brings an experience that carries a border or a red line. And once that line is crossed, there will be a price to pay. For instance, if you murder someone, there will not be any way to unmurder them and bring them back to life. There will be no undoing of that decisive action and no going back. So even if you manage to go back to some semblance of what used to be, it will never be the same as it was. A financial system cannot be murdered in the same way that a human can, but it can be brought to a standstill. It can also be fanned into inflationary spirals that run out of control and then collapse. So since our question is about the impact of the shutdown on the financial system, and justice represents something thoughtful, fair, honest, and wise, the message would be that we must find out what everyone needs and work toward taking care of all. In fact, the concept of justice asks us to take a deeply practical approach to life that takes into account the hopes, the desires, the needs, wishes, fears, and capabilities of all concerned, and come up with a balanced outcome that's acceptable to everyone, while also freeing those who want something different and encouraging them to go after what they want, as long as there's no harm to others. So this doesn't mean that those who make decisions that affect the financial system are responsible for every spoiled, selfish, or lazy individual who wants to be taken care of. Quite the contrary. Justice demands discernment and critical thinking. And no decision will satisfy everyone, but good decisions should take care of the greatest number of people possible. So there's a violet curtain behind the throne here, and that curtain represents the worlds of spirituality and energy that radiate into unexpected areas and create outcomes that may not have been expected. This tells us that the effects of the shutdown will radiate into our world and communities in ways that we did not anticipate. Since justice tends to be a card dealing with the realities of physical life and actions that come from the heart, this might be a very good message that as a result of the shutdown, we will take care of one another and prevent catastrophe from happening. So key words for justice, the justice card, are equity and value, rightness, executive decisions, innocence, clarity, perspective, reason, fairness, balance, and escape from greed or vengeance. Question number 3. What advice does the animal kingdom have for us in handling the politicians that were trapped and caught up in unsavory relationships with children or treasonous behavior? Ooh. In the past, I have asked for general advice from the animal kingdom, but this month, like I said, I had so many questions that I decided to see what would happen if I asked for specific advice. And the card I pulled was the wild boar, number 48 in the animal medicine deck, with a shocking one-word piece of advice for dealing with those politicians. It was confrontation. Confrontation. The story that goes with this card is of a young warrior who lied about something and got caught. He had a choice: banishment from the tribe or facing a wild boar with only a knife. It was not an easy choice. Banishment meant certain death because no one can survive alone. And a wild boar was a serious beast to confront. However, he had a dream in which he met a wild boar who told him that if he could confront the self-important, lying self, he would be able to survive their combat. The young warrior decided to commit to the truth forever. And when he met the wild boar, he was able to slay it. Even though we don't talk much about morals or moral authority anymore, I'm going to ask an old-fashioned question. What is the moral of this story? In other words, what are we to learn? We are to learn that lying is not acceptable. And when we pretend that we don't know what to do about the lie, we are lying to ourselves. We do know, even if the lie is gigantic and we feel awkward in the face of the deception, we know. We could start with careful discernment. For instance, not everyone that ended up in a political bribery trap is intrinsically bad. Some people may have been drugged and then photographed after being set up to look like they were doing something awful when they had no idea what was happening. What is their mistake? It is that they did not trust the truth or we, the people, to understand what really happened. Why do they not trust us? Because they don't trust themselves. Others may have taken money because they genuinely needed it. And I'm sure I'm going out on a limb when I say a few people may have misunderstood the offer of the money, or thought they would pay it back and be free of the whole thing, or perhaps didn't think they were doing anything that was all that bad. And they may have been on the naive side in thinking, well, everybody else is doing it. Or they got comfortable with taking a little money now and then when they realized that not every vote they made had to be swayed according to orders from those extortioners pulling strings, those who were demanding a particular outcome to that vote. Maybe they only grasped the fullness of their mistake when a critical vote brought orders from somewhere above, orders that forced the politician to go back on the very promises that got him or her elected. I wasn't born yesterday, and so I'm sure that a good number of politicians probably started with true passion to fix things, but stepped into a pit they couldn't get out of and ended up telling themselves, well, this is how it's done now. This is how things work. Others certainly knew exactly what they were doing. They may even have gotten into politics for the sole reason that they saw the money and power that flowed through those circles, and they wanted a piece of that action. Whatever the reasons for the serious corruption in government, what the wild boar tells us is that those people are weak, weak-hearted, weak-willed, and often ethically bankrupt. And they must be confronted both for their sake and for ours. In confronting them, they will be forced to find the inner strength to stop lying to themselves and to us. And that is a true gift for them when they stop lying to themselves. Wild boar reminds everyone on both sides, the politicians and the people, that everyone has been avoiding the inevitable. The inevitable is the need to confront the situation before it blows up in our faces. The boar urges us to gather strength and courage. Stop pretending we don't know what's happening. Stop telling ourselves that we don't have any power. Stop acting like we don't know how to handle it, and just do the best we can. We are encouraged to let go of feelings of helplessness, overwhelming emotion, and the kind of anger or vengeance that causes more damage than is already being done. Wild boar offers to share its own strength and power with us. I'd say let's take that offer. Keywords for the wild boar are confrontation, truth, human weaknesses, end of avoidance, trust, helplessness, the heart of the matter, reclaiming energy, and mindful presence. Wow. And question number 4, what does the plant kingdom have to say regarding the appearance and impact of 3i Atlas in our solar system? And the card drawn from the Herbal Astrology Oracle deck was mugwort, number 10, a plant that urges the use of psychic abilities for healing all things, including our understanding of bodies, of one another, of the greater world we live in, which is full of all sorts of bodies, including the bodies of the sun, the moon, the stars, and various other bodies moving through space. So to heal is to make whole. It's to fill, to complete, to satisfy. And to see the value and the role of how everything fits and works together. And then to align oneself with that wholeness of life and its creations. Mugwort is most closely related to the moon, which has everything to do with emotions, especially those emotions that are generated in low light conditions, such as moonlight. This tells us that when we're dealing with high emotion and not enough light to see clearly, the use of psychic abilities and intuition becomes critically necessary. Since 3i Atlas first appeared in July, there have been dozens of predictions and pronouncements about it. Some say it's a comet. Others say it's an asteroid. Some think it's an alien UFO ship. Others claim it is an unmanned scout ship from somewhere in deep space. While some say it is the long prophesied blue kachina predicted by the Hopi to be the sign that the modern world is ending. What mugwort says is that all of these various perspectives are true, because each individual psyche creates its own world of perception and experience. Thus, what you see, hear, feel, and think is what is real for you. Mugwort symbolizes healing that begins when you allow yourself to say and do what comes naturally from within you. When everyone does this, we get a world of multiple possibilities, creating a dynamic, moving pool of experiences in which your thinking influences others and their thinking influences you, creating an ongoing fabric of shifting ideas, insights, worries and fears, ahas, pains, joys, laughs, and many other experiences in each of us. Mugwort is a bitter plant. Bitters are good for the liver and good for the digestive system. It initiates healing in the realm of the psyche. It helps integrate the shadow self. And mugwort opens us to the hidden worlds that are all around us. We're floating in other worlds. So it helps people to face and digest the bitter truth of a situation while developing a beautiful resilience that prevents total breakdown when the truth of that situation finally hits. It was used, mugwort was used in olden times to ward off evil spirits and parasitic energies, while allowing exploration into other realms, such as the fairy realms. Now, the fairy realms include fairies, elves, divas, and all of those are in realms that are closest to us in terms of frequency, because we are immersed in the world of nature And these forms of intelligence, fairies, elves, divas, are forms of intelligence that manage the trees, the flowers, and the plants that make up the natural world. Thus, that world is one of the first and easiest realms to expand into and explore. Mugwort has long been known as a plant that signals, quote, a transition is taking place and you are in the thick of it. There's that transition theme again. A transition is taking place and we are in the thick of it. In fact, mugwort is the master of what is known as liminal spaces. And liminal spaces are boundary places or threshold areas that sometimes have this eerie feel or kind of a surreal appearance. Sometimes you're someplace and everything just seems surreal. So that's a liminal space. And mugwort is the master of those spaces. It says, pay attention, be in those spaces, let yourself transition. So is Three-Eye Atlas a signal to all that we are in a liminal time and place as we go through the process of transforming to something new? The appearance of Three-Eye Atlas is a very interesting phenomena at this point in time. And since mugwort symbolizes the mystical workings of the universal mind, it reminds us that we're on a path to higher consciousness, and there is much to learn along the way. Typically, the learning will be at all levels: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Among those learning about the physical world are the scientists, both professional and amateur. We have both kinds of science people. What are they learning? So far, they have learned that Three-Eye Atlas is not a comet. A comet is ice. It's not a typical asteroid. An asteroid is metal. And perhaps not an asteroid at all. Whatever it is, it flew behind the sun on the 29th of October, but it exhibited some very unusual behavior just before it disappeared by breaking into 12 pieces. However, instead of shooting apart in a dozen directions, the 12 pieces then formed a circle and flew along together until it was out of sight behind the sun. The symbolism of this is extraordinary. Wow. Is it telling us that we are going to break apart, but will reform in a circle that flies or works together while adapting to intense light? Is it telling us that we need this kind of adaptation and flexibility in order to survive and for all to thrive? Is it demonstrating a new kind of matter that behaves differently from anything we have seen before? Although most people don't discuss space energy every day, the fact is that every physical form that exists radiates some of the energy they are made of. So when that form is also moving through space, even more powerful radiating waves are created or bounce off of it to move in new directions. Three-Eye Atlas is creating new waves of energy that will impact us and our entire solar system. And mugwort urges us to tune into these energies, study them, and learn from them. When matter behaves differently than what we typically see, you can bet that we are witnessing a new law of physics that will be very useful in the future. Because mugwort is a powerful intermediary that impacts the digestive system, we will close with the observation that digestion is literally a process of transformation. Food is a form of energy. We put food into us, and the body transforms it into other forms of energy that regenerate us daily. Is mugwort appearing in response to Three-Eye Atlas because this unusual object is bringing new and unusual forms of energy into our solar system? And we will have to digest these energies in ways that nurture transformation? Keywords for mugwort are dream work, transition, other realities, liminal spaces, clairvoyance, digestion, use of psychic abilities, learning, the unexpected, and foresight. So that's it for this tarot. So let's summarize what the cards have said. Question number 1. What is the impact of the U.S. government shutdown 6 months from now? And then 1 year from now? And then why? What has changed? Once I asked the question and drew that first card, the Three of Cups, it led to a second and then a third question, which brought the Five of Cups and then the Eight of Cups. When you listen to the question and then look at the progression of the cards, it's clear there's a period of relief and celebration in there. However, I didn't ask whether the shutdown had ended or the government had ended. Whichever occurs, that Five of Cups shows that we have some ongoing fallout from the shutdown that brings sadness, regret, and grieving over something that was ended or lost. So when I asked why didn't the shutdown continue, the Eight of Cups tells us that people are questioning everything and that something is being abandoned. People are turning around, walking away, leaving to search for something new. It's quite an interesting set of cards. Question number 2. What will happen to the financial system and the economy as a result of the shutdown? And this question brought the Justice card, a powerful card that's known as a borderline or red line of some kind. It is a card of feminine power coming to the fore, and it tells us that the financial system may be going through the courts in a way that overhauls everything. It reminds us that we must be deeply practical. We must strive to serve as many as possible, wisely and well, while leaving those who want something different free to pursue their own paths. Justice reminds us that we cannot separate money from spirituality. And this means a spirit of helpfulness, goodwill, common sense, and personal responsibility will be needed. Question number 3, what advice does the animal kingdom have for us in handling the politicians that were trapped and caught up in unsavory relationships with children or treasonous behavior? And this question, which I asked of the animal kingdom, brought the wild boar. This is a tough card and one that doesn't make it easy to gloss over the reality of our situation. The wild boar is a card that says it is time for confrontation. When weak people get into places of power and begin to act in ways that undermine civilized society, they must be confronted. The result of this is a reckoning that brings truth, strength, and trust to all. When confrontation is successful, The truth is no longer destroying society. The weak learn to be strong in facing themselves and the people they're supposed to be serving, and trust is restored on all sides. The warning, it's that confrontation is inevitable one way or another, and if there is no confrontation, there will be an explosion with great damage. I think we should avoid that. And question number 4, what does the plant kingdom have to say regarding the appearance and impact of 3i Atlas in our solar system? And drawing from the Herbal Astrology Oracle deck, I got the Mugwort card, a card that urges us to use our psychic abilities to determine what it is, to draw healing energies, new ideas, and new information from 3i Atlas, and then incorporate that info into our lives. With everyone who sees or hears about 3i Atlas having a different view of what it is and why it has shown up in our solar system, perhaps it's time for us to recognize that everyone will have their own perception and ideas about this strange celestial body. The message of Mugwort is that all of these interpretations will be true and valid, signaling the great diversity of minds in our world, and possibly coming to understand the nature of reality a little better. Mugwort will also help us to digest these new ideas and energies, and since digestion is a process of transformation, it points to the transformation of ourselves. To sum up, the appearance and the impact of 3i Atlas may be a sign that we will transform enough ourselves to be able to transform our world. So thanks so much for listening, and have a wonderful month and a warm and tasty Thanksgiving. Take care.